wish you're in Hadong, Korea with me. This place is amazing to me. I see it kind of as the next Zen paradise, right? Like kind of like Kyoto Uji vibes. All right, anyways, so the big turbo thought in my mind is, why is there so much like design hierarchy and racism? So what I mean by that is this. Wow, it's so beautiful. Okay, so for example, you know, why is it that even if you're super rich and successful in Korea, you would prefer driving a Rolls-Royce, a Lamborghini, a Bentley, a Mercedes Maybach, or a S-Class rather than driving the highest end Hyundai Genesis or Kia, whatever? Because actually, in fact, I personally think, shout out to Hyundai design team, etc. And also, FYI, Hyundai owns Kia and also Hyundai Genesis. Genesis is Hyundai. But anyways, so I actually personally think that the design of the new modern Hyundais, Kias, Genesis is actually superior to a lot of the German designs. So for example, the new Hyundai, man, they need to fix their naming conventions. I'll write some thoughts. But anyways, the new super high-end luxury sedan of Hyundai Genesis, Genesis.com, the extended wheelbase, I think it's, in my mind, like a greater flex and more interesting and superior than even having the most high-end Rolls-Royce Cullinan or the, Phantom or the Ghost or the even driving a Lamborghini Urus or a Bentley Mulsanne or something like that. And why is that the case? I think these other foreign brands, right, like they could kind of rest on their laurels knowing that they have the brand prestige and people will still probably buy it because people have no design taste and they prefer more prestige. Whereas maybe more the scrappy underdogs like Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, because they're underdogs, there's a stronger impetus and drive to become more epic and stuff like that because they're the underdog. And Americans like underdogs. Also, the thing that's so interesting with like Hyundai, etc., is that they're Korean American. Like at this point, we could consider Korea kind of like a neo or a new colony of America. Just look at the military intervention. And so even the best designers, I think, that come out of Art Center, automotive design, whatever, shout out to my my brother-in-law John Narciso, is the best, most innovative designers tend to be Korean American, and they're all like flocking to Hyundai and Kia, which actually are doing super interesting stuff. But anyways, so I think maybe it's like it takes time to create some sort of brand identity or legacy or prestige. So for example, like BMW, Mercedes has been around way longer than Hyundai, Kia. And then also when Hyundai, Kia, etc. started off, like they were actually very not so good cars, right, and super cheap, whatever. But then again, we had to consider too, especially post-war World War II, the notion of quote made in Japan was actually seen as inferior, like very much like the way we see made in China as being inferior today. To have a Honda car was not seen as reliable, not seen as good and stuff like that. So building a brand takes time. But the problem I feel and I think is that people have no pride. They don't have self-pride. I actually think that, contrary to popular belief, most people nowadays don't have any national pride. So for example, if you're a super billionaire rich mainland Chinese businessman or whatever, you would prefer probably being driven around in a Rolls-Royce or some sort of car like that instead of the highest end Chinese car company, like a Karma or a Faraday Future, right? Same thing with the Korean businessman, the Korean CEO. Like my friend June Goodhouse Kim, I think he told me a story of like how one of the ex Hyundai CEOs was like being seen driven around in either a Jaguar or a Rolls Royce or something like that, or a Mercedes, I don't know. And it's like so hypocritical because, or contradictory, because here you have the CEO of Hyundai, right, prefer being driven in a different type of car than his own national car. Like that's not a good idea. Like it's kind of the same thing too, where you know, most of my friends or Google employees I know, right, they all have MacBook Pros. They're not using a Chromebook, right? They all would prefer to have the newest iPhone Pro. They're not going to be using a Pixel, right? But you know, you could do a business meeting, you got to show up with the Chromebook and the Pixel because, you know, you got to like put on that facade. But anyways, so people tend not to have pride in their own things and devices, etc. And so I feel like the first step is to almost become more like blockheaded and more nationalistic towards whatever you're doing, your things, etc. Because in fact, that's how we build pride. So for example, you know, everyone loves Tesla, right? But people tend to forget or not think that actually, yes, yep, yeah, look, the new Hyundai Genesis look really good, right? So people forget that also, like, Tesla is an American company technically. Elon Musk, probably the most successful entrepreneur of all time, at least by today's regards, is by nationality South African. But thank God that America has pretty lax, or maybe had lax policies towards immigration and resettlement. Even Steve Jobs, right, like his dad, his estranged dad was actually Lebanese, I believe. Oh no, not Lebanese, Syrian, from Syria. Also probably the most interesting, greatest modern living philosopher, Nassim Taleb, is Lebanese, from Beirut, Lebanon, but now resides in the States. So I think maybe the strength of America and American design thinking and stuff like that is to kind of shamelessly steal from other schools and modes of thought. Like even Steve Jobs, hugely inspired by the Bauhaus, German design, Dieter Rams, etc. And he also loved like Zen, Japanese, wabi-sabi, Kyoto aesthetics. So he was the first person with the courage or the balls to kind of become more of a tyrant, like a design tyrant, where it's like it was either Steve's Jobs way or the highway. And his tenacity and his stubbornness was great, because do you remember when the first iPhone first came out? Everyone's like, what? There's only one button, a home screen? Like this, he was seen as insane. And also not having a physical keyboard when Blackberries were all the rage, right? So, or when the first, you know, iPad was invented, right? That there were no USB ports, and then people were like giving so much hate mail, right? But anyways, so as a designer or innovator or whatever you are, right, to become insanely tenacious and hard-headed in your design beliefs is essential. Because if you kowtow or quote, you know, compromise or try to reach some sort of accord with others, you're just going to end up making like a very mediocre or uninteresting product. And for the most part, I think the reason why Asian design tends to, and even German design, truth be told, tends to be kind of more iterative and not radically different, is that the CEOs or the heads or the, you know, founders, whatever, they don't really have a strong enough vision or tenacity to keep things their way. So for example, in Asia, China, Korea, Japan, etc., there's kind of more of a